Welcome back to the Restaurant Technology Guys podcast. I thank everyone out there for joining us. As I say each and every time, you guys' time is valuable and you guys have lots of choices. So thank you guys for spending time. Today, we are joined by somebody that's in a very growing space within our industry. And I'm excited to hear Lewis talk a little bit about this because I think customer data and where people are at with their data is really, really critical to brand success today. And I think we're at some of the early stages, at least in the restaurant vertical with this. But Lewis, before we jump into what you get to do for a living, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about who you are, where you came from, and then we can talk a little bit about what you get to do for a living.
I would love to. And first off, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. I have been in the digital media industry for the past 25 years, really working through all aspects of digital advertising and marketing as it came up in the world, going back to the very late 90s. There's something that makes me very passionate about what I do and makes this role at Pairzon really fun for me. And the reason is so many marketers are still measuring the campaign, the success of their campaigns using old metrics or vanity metrics, right? So click-through rate. People are still optimizing expensive campaigns via click-through rate. What we know from learning about the industry is that the people who click are not necessarily the people who buy stuff. And some people are using completed views in a video as a metric. We believe that these are all outdated and in some cases counterproductive. You have to once again wed the sales part of an organization to the marketing part of an organization. The metrics that actually count for retailers and hospitality orgs is how many people saw the ad online or SMS or email and then came to the store or the hotel or the restaurant, made a purchase. What did they purchase down to the SKU level? And which of the advertising did they see that showed that resulted in them making that action and going to the store, going to the restaurant, going to the hotel? We do that. And in a nutshell, it's one of our two superpowers. The first, of course, is tying online advertising to in-store brick and mortar performance. And the second is predicting using AI algorithms, which of your consumers as a retailer or marketer are most likely to convert. And you mentioned data a moment ago. Everything we do is based upon the retailer's first party data. So there's great third party data you can buy. There's some trouble brewing, as I'm sure you've heard in the third party data business around cookie acceptability and deprecation. So when you are working as a retailer with your most precious and personal asset, your first party data, you get around many of the pitfalls that we've been involved with data targeting over the past several years. So your data is precious. Retailers, restaurateurs, hoteliers, we see that they're not in many cases taking full advantage of that data. And so we're here to help them use their data, pull out the insight and sell more. That's really what we believe online advertising should be measured by, selling more stuff.
I think Lewis, you talked a little bit about what you guys do, and I know that you guys have a depth of experience of a lot of retail. And I would say, and I think oftentimes when I talk with people about the use of data within offline retail, and I call it offline retail in restaurants primarily, which is what our audience is listening for. They're really far behind grocery. They're really far behind a lot of these retailers with being able to do the things that general retailers and especially e-commerce retailers have been doing for years.
That's right.
And I oftentimes when I talk to marketers will do that old adage, the joke that, 50% of marketing works. We just don't know what 50%. The funny thing is nowadays we can know what works. And so
That's
I'm
right.
excited to explore how and why you guys do it the way you guys do it. But before we go there, Lewis, you've been around this space for a while. Talk to me about traditionally how people have thought about this. You talked about click-through rates. You've talked about these vanity metrics. Why is it that people are still thinking those are valuable pieces? Because I think all too often, our retailers that we talk to, our restaurants that we talk to, they're not marketing experts. The CEOs and the CFOs aren't marketing experts. They don't know that they have access to some of these other things. And so their CMO or their VP of marketing might come in and talk to them about these vanity metrics and get them all excited about the things that they're doing and how successful they are. Why is it that that's what people have gravitated to thus far until they get with a solution like what you guys are doing?
Old habits, they do die hard. There's also this sort of intellectual fallacy that, hey, I showed an ad, the person clicked on it, so they must want to go buy the thing. And that's just not true, right? And any number of studies that have been done, the clicks are not necessarily correlated with more things being purchased. And so you've got these habits that are very, very hard to break. You've got agency buyers who are incentivized to perform against metrics that just don't have anything to do with did their advertising push products through the physical location or the online location. So, the Wanamaker quote that you made about 50% working, 50% not. If you actually are a marketer today and you don't know which of your advertising is working, that is not the nature of the industry. That is your fault. There
Mhm.
is no reason in today's world with the tools that are available to marketers to not understand which of their advertising is working. Now, more insidiously, when you do use those proxy metrics to measure your success, now you're throwing yourself false positives, right? Now you're saying, oh man, 10% of people open this email. So this must be the most effective email we've ever done. Maybe, but what happened after they read that email? Did they go into the store? Did they make a reservation at the restaurant? Did they buy something? What did they buy? Did they come back? How quickly did they come back? And so leveraging all of this data that the marketer has on their own about their audience is the purest and clearest signal you can get on intent to purchase and actual purchase history.
Well, and I think that that's Lewis, when I talk with some of our retailers, the big challenge that we've continued to run into in restaurants is attribution. They know that they saw it, they can see the metrics that they saw it, but talk to me a little bit about the difficulty translating from I saw an ad, I might have even clicked an ad, I signed up for a newsletter, I got the coupon or I got this offer, whatever this offer may be, translating that down to a store level and that guest. Because again, I was talking with the previous guest a couple of months ago. I ultimately went to a brand and I'd love to talk a little bit about this. I went to a brand because I got an advertisement in the mail
Mhm.
and it was 10% off an order of $50 or more. And we chose to go there based on that, but ultimately forgot the ad.
Mhm.
We forgot to bring the ad with us. So they weren't able to get attribution. I know that for a fact. And it's not like they
Oh,
asked at the checkout, hey, did you come in because the ad that we sent in the weekly flyer? But talk to me a little bit about the difficulty and why you would even make such a bold statement that says, marketers are I don't remember exactly the adjective you used, but I'm gonna paraphrase it. They're being lazy if they're not attributing their advertising spend to actual spend. Historically, it's been harder to get those things. And talk to me a little bit about the advancements over the last 20 years and why you think it's something that is critical to today's consumer and to today's brands when they're doing those things.
Anybody that's ever run a restaurant knows the craziness that happens during a meal period in a rush. One of our partners, Restaurant Technologies Total Oil Management Solution, is an end to end oil management system that delivers, filters, monitors, and recycles your cooking oil, taking one of the jobs that none of your team wants to do and takes it off your hands, allowing your team members to focus on their guest. Control the kitchen chaos with restaurant technologies and make your kitchen safer while maximizing your staff's time. The solution can be provided at no upfront cost. If you want to learn more, please check out rti-inc.com or call 888-796-4997.
I don't think it's laziness. I think it is simply not knowing that there is a better way or not evangelizing through their organization that there is a better way of doing this. And again, when you think about it, so let's say this consumer consumed the entire video. It was 30 seconds long. It was an ad and they consumed the whole thing. That just doesn't mean anything in terms of in-store sales, right? What were they doing when that video was playing? Maybe they were in the bathroom. Maybe they were opening the front door. Right? Without tying your advertising to actual sales, you're missing out. And one method that a lot of retailers and restaurateurs and hoteliers use is a loyalty program. So when you sign up for a loyalty program, you are of course providing information on an up-to-date basis to that marketer. A loyalty program allows us to much, much more fully target the consumers across the internet who we believe are most likely to convert. So again, the superpower is taking AI, using it to look at all of your consumer behavior, all of your transaction logs for the last couple of years, real time access to your POS, so that the data is always fresh. Now, we talk a lot about targeting. We should also talk about anti targeting and the importance of it. When you are in market for a pair of shoes, everybody uses this example, but I only know the pair of shoes example. And you go shopping online, and then all of a sudden you get followed around online everywhere you go with an ad for those pair of shoes. And you said, that's it. It's great. I'm actually going to the store and I'm going to buy those pair of shoes. So you go to the store, you buy the shoes you got the ad for. attribution happens, consumer wins, marketer wins, right? What happens next? Consumer puts their shoes on, they go back online and seeing the same ad. And they go to work the next day and they're seeing the same ad. And from a consumer perspective, this is one of the number one things that consumers say when you ask them, is online advertising creepy, right? People don't like being followed around with the same ad across the internet, but more importantly, they really don't like followed around with the same ad after they already bought the product and are thus no longer in
Mhm.
market for that product. What you're able to do as a marketer in anti-targeting those who've already converted or whom you know for whatever reason are not going to convert, you're not ticking off consumers who bought your products. They're still seeing the ads. And critically, you're not wasting money, right? You showing an ad to a consumer that's already bought that product is money down the drain. There is literally no value in doing that.
Well, and I think that one of the things that we talk oftentimes about when we talk about, this data and knowing who your consumer is and putting advertisements in front of them is certain people want certain things. I happen to not drink. I tell, longtime listeners know I haven't drank in quite some time. No problem with people drinking. My wife drinks. Lots of people I know drink. I just choose not to drink. So sending me advertisements directly for the beer of the month club or the whiskey of the month club ultimately turns me off from that messaging and I ignore it. Whether that message has hit me on, any of the social platforms or it's hit me via email or it's hit me, on the web, however it's done that, it's going to turn me off because they don't necessarily know who I am. Same thing on any of those different platforms. If I have already converted, telling me to come in if once every 6 weeks I go into this brand to go eat food and they hit me and trying to get me every 2 weeks, it's probably gonna frustrate me versus maybe hitting me and trying to get me from 6 weeks to 5.5 weeks or 4 weeks or somewhere closer to that. I guess, Louis, talk to me about why not even why, how is it today that we now have the capability to see these things even for that anti-targeting? Because this is news to me. I didn't even realize that you guys could now start to see through the data that I have consumed that product
Yeah.
or I have gone to that brand or I have bought those shoes. I had no idea that we were at that point now where they can see the conversion because again, I still have brands that are doing it really poorly on social. I'm like, dude, I already bought that. I did click the ad. I did go to the shop now button. I did buy that product online and man, now you're continuing to spend money on me and I'm too lazy to put the not interested button on social. Maybe I should to save those guys some money, but it's interesting to me, and I wasn't even quite sure that that happened.
Yeah, it's not your responsibility as a consumer to curate whether or not you've bought a product for the purpose of saving the marketer money, right? That is good of you, but that's not what consumers are all about, is and not something that should be on the consumer's agenda of having to do when they consume content online. The thing to keep in mind, of course, about using first party data, and I know that I keep hammering away at this point, but I will continue doing so because it is so important. Using first party data gives you a competitive advantage over your competitors who are not doing so. Let's go into your hypothetical. The store that's targeting you for beer, is that a grocer? Is it a liquor store?
Happens to be a restaurant.
Okay,
Happens
a
to be a
restaurant.
restaurant
Great.
that is a very primarily, they 30% of their sales are from the beers that are coming out. They have a beer of the month club that you can get it sent to your house. It happens to be a brand like that, that is doing it. And I think it's fantastic. And when I did drink, I actually drink their beer, but I haven't in a very long time. And I am a loyalty member. So I'll go through it even at that point. I am a loyalty member. I do loyalty so they know who I am. They know what my transactions are and they know that there's never been a beer because my wife doesn't drink beer. She drinks other things, but she doesn't drink beer. So there's never been a time in the last 14 years that it's been in my basket. And they should know that by now
They
and
should know
not
that
send
by
that
now.
stuff to me.
Exactly. So that's the key, right? It is very easy once you have all the data in one place to see, this guy comes to a restaurant all the time. He tips well, he spends a bunch of money on chicken tenders, but he never drinks. And so we're going to go ahead and now that signal is so strong, we're going to put him in the segment that says does not drink. And so you'll be targeted if the restaurant does everything right, you'll be targeted with ads for non-alcoholic items. They won't be wasting money and potentially angering you by sending you ads for alcoholic beverages when you made it very clear in your actions that you are not
Mhm.
interested in being rewarded or incentivized to come in and buy a beer. That's critically important. So few companies are doing that. Maybe in yesterday, there would be a little box you would tick on the loyalty program registration that says, I'm interested in food, holiday parties, and then it says alcohol, and I'm not going to take alcohol, right? But you don't even have to do that, right? You can use AI
Mhm.
to see, this guy has come to the restaurant 7 times in the last month. He's in our absolute super user category. We love him, but in looking at the SKU history, he never buys beer. So we should make the leap of logic that says this guy is probably not going to buy beer. And honestly, I'd much rather not show the ad to somebody who is not a buyer than spend the extra money showing the ad and hope that what? Your behavior after 14 years is going to change? It's crazy. Being able to
Or
leverage,
next time I do buy a beer, they should signal it that says, "Hey, you know what? He hasn't bought a beer in 14
that's
years."
right.
AI can tell you now there's a beer in his basket. Was the party size more than his traditional party size?
That's right.
Was he there? I mean, and this is the stuff that I really want to dig into, Lewis, because I think with machine learning and AI and these logarithms, you have the capability to see what the occasion is. If I'm now taking an associate out to dinner, not just my family, I happen to have 4 kids and a wife, and my wife drinks, and my kids are all underage, so none of them drink. And so I don't drink, none of my kids drink, and my wife always drinks either a margarita or she drinks a martini at this place. It's just what she drinks. She never drinks anything else. And so if something else shows up in my basket, was my basket size now bigger? Did I now have 10 people at the party?
Hmm?
Was there zero kids meals on the deal, but I took and used that occasion to go take some friends out, and there was 6 of us, and there was 4 beers on the check because everybody else that was not my wife and I did have a beer, but it was a 6 top, but it was a 6 top all with adult entrees, not a 6 top with some kids meals and
Right.
some regular deals. So I do want to talk through that because I hear from restaurant brands, Lewis, all the time that they are inundated with data, and being able to look at these types of things and be able to make these business decisions about this is really, really hard because you're constantly getting peppered with this data that even that example that we just talked about, my frequency for this brand, when I'm with my family, I eat one way. When I'm with a business associate, I eat a different way. And when I'm traveling, I eat a different way. Just because this is a national brand and I go to it in different places and I have different occurrences, but I still attach my loyalty to it and so they know who I am. To me about the proliferation of data and really how AI and machine learning and your guys as you talked about it, your secret sauce is helping people to surface these types of decisions because this is really where I think the power is starting to come in is not just in the capture, but in these suggestive things that you're talking about.
Yeah. So let's think about the best way to talk about this. Do you have a sense as to what these restaurateurs are doing today with this data, or are they just inundated with it and kind of rolling off their bat?
I mean, unfortunately, marketing gets a decent amount of budget, but so much of it goes into ad spend. And so
Right.
that's the hard part is the data analytics. And most marketers aren't data analytics people. They didn't go into marketing to go do data analytics. They went into marketing ultimately, whether it be creative or to truly, put a brand out there and get people to like it and to drive that behavior. They don't want to be a data analyst. And so they struggle with that, which is quite frankly, where I think the power of AI. I mean, I look at even for myself on this podcast. I'm now doing show notes. I'm now doing transcripts. I'm using AI to help me with all of that. Whereas before, I couldn't do it. I couldn't produce enough content in enough shows in enough period of time and do all of those things. Whereas I do believe with machine learning and AI, the capabilities are there to be able to do this what if analysis. Hey, how many people are in this geography that drink beer on a regular basis and it's been in their basket in the last month? That stuff would have taken a data analyst 5 years ago or 10 years ago days to figure these things out. And, the campaign might be over. The marketer might be like, hey, it's St. Patty's Day coming up. Let's go figure out how to do a St. Patty's Day deal. And now they can go get the data to be able to talk to those people to drive the behavior for St. Patty's Day. Whereas years ago they wouldn't have been able to without having a full FP&A group that would be able to do that. So sorry, I'll lead you into that, but I think it's where computer vision, I mean not computer vision, but AI and all of the different machine learning logarithms can give us the capability to micro segment people and truly know who those people are.
Absolutely. Great point. We like to joke that our biggest competitor is Excel because of exactly what you just said, right? So before Pairzon and before companies like ours, you would have that team of 10, 15 analysts in a room pouring through the spreadsheets, trying to pluck out learnings that they could then turn into things that will make their business run better, things that will increase sales. That is expensive, that is unsustainable, and it's unscalable. And so a lot of companies, especially smaller businesses, just don't do it. And again, like you are missing out on a huge competitive differentiator when you don't use your data to understand what's going on with your consumers, predict their behavior in the future, and then close that loop between advertising and sales. So you really know, is this stuff working? And you don't have to rely on a room full of data analysts looking at Excel spreadsheets. There's nothing wrong with that, but you just can't do it at the scale that AI is able to do it for you.
Well, and the other piece that I think is really critical is that you can't do it at scale, and you also can't micro segment people because people historically, at least from my understanding of your industry, is they would get put into generalized buckets. I'm a father, I kind of fit that, upper middle class income, white collar neighborhood, type of profile. But unfortunately, the customization that a lot of e-commerce brands have been able to do, they know exactly what I'm going to buy because I'm really into soccer and I'm really into hiking and I'm really into baseball. Like those are things that, I don't look like the guy that, that is next door to me who
Right.
might not be into sports at all. And so being able to even micro target his income could be exactly the same. He could be in the same geo, but and he could have 4 kids just like I do. But unfortunately, historically, they put these into very generalized buckets because it was almost impossible to get to that micro targeting level.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about how much faster that is to get there with the data access that you guys have, because I think it's critical for people to understand that you're collecting this data, but if you're not utilizing it to drive customer satisfaction at the end of the day and drive sales, you're missing out.
Yeah, there's another old joke in the industry that says by the time you're done targeting, if you micro target, you sort of make the data targeting narrower and narrower, you're better off just picking up the phone and calling the 15 people who you want to buy your product. And so you don't have to do that anymore. There are tools like ours that let you understand how many people are there in this audience of consumers that would fit into, right? And whichever method your business uses to measure advertising effectiveness, whether it's the index model, recency, frequency, monetary value, we can support all those in platform. And probably my favorite is recency, frequency, monetary value, because it lets you as a business owner analyze all the segments of your customers who have come to the store, not come to the store, bought something, the category of thing they bought. And all this works in real time. So if somebody is in your, oh, we've got trouble with this person, you've only seen them once in the past year category, and they come in and they come again the following week, now they're no longer in the in trouble category. Let's move them up a little bit to opportunity category, right? And that's something that, again, I just don't think you can do that without having the benefit of machine learning algorithms and AI on your side. It would just be difficult, if not impossible.
I'm going to pivot a little bit. You've talked about first party data for a while. We did have somebody on the show recently that was a third party company. I think that, as you said, there's value in that, but there's more value if you focus on capturing the first party data. Talk to me a little bit about how Pairzon does that, especially in offline restaurants. And I say offline restaurants, still the numbers and the percentages, if you're not talking pizza, are very, very low, less than 50%, and a lot of brands less than 20%, where you do capture the guest name, the guest email address, because it's that. And then you've got, the advent in restaurants of third party aggregators like, third party delivery service providers like DoorDash and Grubhub and Uber Eats. And oftentimes you don't get that direct consumer data about those guys. So talk to me a little bit about your guys' philosophy in those restaurant brands where my primary frequency is in store, in person, whether it be a counter service place or a table service place, to be able to capture who that guest is. Because that historically has been one of the biggest challenges for restaurants is while they get it and they want to see that guest, they can't figure out who they are without changing the guest experience so dramatically that it causes operational friction.
So you don't have to change your guest experience that dramatically. And that's the secret, right? So the easiest way to be able to identify your audiences is by having a loyalty program. And 2 or 3 points of data like email address, first name, last name, et cetera, phone number will enable you to find those users where they exist online. There is nothing wrong with third party data, and you should not feel bad if you were a marketer who's making use of third party data. It's valuable. But the problem with third-party data, in addition to all of the sort of privacy and legislative ways that it's becoming increasingly fraught, probably third-party data is your competitor can buy the exact same thing. I'm Bob's Pizza. Next door is Lewis's Pizza. Bob's Pizza and Lewis's Pizza are going after the same market, the same people. And so they're both very qualified at buying third party data. But now there's no competitive advantage. Like, why would you choose Bob's over Lewis's, right? With the power of first party data, and you don't need to have a loyalty program to collect first party data. You can do what we do for our customers who don't have loyalty programs is we can help them send out receipts. Think about it, right? You're in the store, you made the purchase, you're at the restaurant, you get the check, and they say, would you like us to email your receipt to you? Wonderful. Would you like to give us your SMS number? Would you like to give us your email address? However you want to do it. And you see this, by the way, at all the places that have those self-checkout terminals or the swipe your card here. I was at a restaurant here in the US, where they did the European style, brought the reader to me and put the stick in the right. So you can collect that data in as many different ways as are legally possible and are respectful to your consumers. We see that our marketer customers who have loyalty programs are able to match somewhere around 85% of their consumers online. If you don't have a loyalty program, it's anywhere between 20, 30, maybe 40% match. But again, now you're matching deterministically 20, 30, 40%, whereas previously you were matching nothing. So there's that. How do we do it in real time and how do we bring it all together? You think about Pairzon as being in the center of the marketing funnel. You've got not the marketing funnel like the stage of the funnel, but the marketing funnel in terms of the infrastructure you have and the systems you use in that place. When you connect to the cash register, the POS system, the transaction logs, that's what permits us to do the grinding and churning and figure out which of those users is most likely to come in and convert. On the other side of the table, you've got the major media buying platforms like Google and TikTok and Meta and so forth. And once those audiences are identified and created in our platform, you can push them directly into the media buying platform for execution across their media. So we're not a demand side platform. We don't own media. We don't involve the media. All we do is create those audiences and then those analytics and help the marketers understand, what is actually working and what is not.
I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the successes that you guys have found with some restaurant brands, Louis, because I think it's critical for our listeners to hear people that are doing it well. Don't have to use brand names, but what are the things where were they? And after they work with Pairzon, how has their brand changed? How has their online advertising changed? And how have they really driven the behavior that they're looking for to drive the sales and the customer engagement that they're looking for?
Yeah, I'll answer that sort of philosophically and in the general sense, just to keep everyone's data to themselves. When you are a restaurateur collecting no information, there's really nothing we can do for you, right? If you're not collecting anything, then there's nothing to match, right? So you got to be collecting something. So once you're collecting information, and again, even if that information is just a phone number or an email address, now you're able to take those data and use it to make smarter advertising choices. Once the advertising campaign ran, you can see which email you sent out, which SMS message you sent, which display ad, which video ad was played to this user that ultimately drove them to come into the store. And so the smart marketers are going into this platform that we have and they see a dashboard, and our customers sometimes call it their morning dashboard because it's got all the information on their business: sales, payment types, recognized consumers, non-recognized consumers. There's even a feature that I think is probably my favorite called market basket analysis, which actually draws a visualization of which products tend to sell together. I see that when people come in and they order beer, they're probably ordering pizza and wings as well. And so let's offer an upsell to the pizza buyers to get them some wings, et cetera. Now you're already retargeting your audiences and telling them, I know about the sort of thing that you're looking for and that will make you a happy consumer. That then informs your outbound advertising. You can use learnings from your first party data to better inform your acquisition, right? So acquisition is really one of two things. We consider obviously new customer acquisition, but also customers who have become latent, customers who become dormant. And in that last category of what needs to fix them, that's acquisition too, right? Odds are they come in once a year and they buy $7 of merchandise. they're probably gone already. So let's go ahead and reacquire them. And by using first party data, not only for remarketing and retargeting to existing customers, also to help use those learnings to help make smarter decisions when advertising to net new audiences.
Well, because you're so in tune with those ad buying platforms, I'd love for you to educate our listeners because they may not understand. I mean, historically, if you're not using a tool like yours or a competitor to yours, when you want to go place an ad on Meta, i.e. Facebook or TikTok or any of those platforms, you've got to log into the to that platform and go create your ad, go manage it, go measure its efficiency, all of those kind of things. Can you talk us through what that looks like from a manual perspective? Because you just talked through how quickly you can do it automatically through your guys' tool. But the alternative, if you're choosing to do this, and larger brands are clearly not, but the smaller brands still are oftentimes going in and placing their own ad
Hmm.
for the one, 2 for 1 this and the holiday special that, and they then have to go manage it all, which I think is a lot of times why people struggle with it is because they don't know another way to do that. So can you talk us through what it looks like to manually do this and then kind of what the world looks like when you guys can implement your solution on this ad buying side?
Yeah. And again, the media platforms, sort of TikTok, Google, these are not our competitors, right? We don't get involved in the actual media buying business. We simply create those audiences and push them into the media buying platforms. Now, if you're a marketer, you want to buy online advertising, those are the places you're probably most likely to go to. You're going to call Google, you're going to call Meta, whoever else is on your agenda, and they'll probably tell you if you're a small business that you need to buy through a reseller of theirs, which is fine. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Still use the platform. It just being supported by another company. And then similarly to how we don't care where your audiences are pushed to in terms of execution, the media buying platforms don't care where those audiences come from, right? We take advantage of APIs that are in place between ourselves and the media buying platforms to push those audiences towards them. And then from their perspective, to push the results towards us so that all of that data is in one place. But you're welcome to work with us, you're welcome to work with one of our competitors, but you still need to have a relationship with the media buying platforms so that they can recognize you, they can put your audiences in the right place, and they can actually place your advertising results.
Well, and the other thing that I heard you talk about that I'd love for you to kind of wrap things out with is the idea that you're getting back the data on this morning dashboard as you
Yes.
talked about. You're seeing what's working and what's not working, and then you can evaluate it and make business decisions based on is TikTok where my users are, is Facebook where my users are, is Instagram where my users are, is, whatever those different platforms are, you're able to do that. So talk me through how impactful that is and be able to really drive that behavior back for the ad buying, the people that are in marketing that are needing to take the sales data and then go buy ads. But now they need to be able to make decisions. They need to be able to pivot and decide, is this working? Is it not working? Is the problem my audience? Is the problem my ad? Is the problem what is it? And then make decisions. But you guys really help them do that.
Yeah, so our favorite metric and one that I will die on the hill of defending is ROAS or return on ad spend. That is, in my opinion, the one metric that any marketer, any small business needs to focus on when they're looking at the effect of their advertising. Did I sell more? And did I acquire this customer for less money than I would have otherwise? And that's it. Like that's the business. There's no trick to it. There's
Mm.
no hidden agendas here. It's simply a matter of understanding, is my advertising working? Now, is it ever going to, or going back to the Wanamaker quote, is it ever going to be 100% understanding of where my advertising is working? No, it's just not.
Mhm.
85% is really, really good. And if you have a loyalty program, odds are you're going to recognize something like 80 to 85% of your customers online. If you don't have a loyalty program, 30, 40% is still better than zero. And then you can make certain assumptions and do lookalikes on your broader audience and see how their behaviors are similar to identified audiences that you have among your own first party data set, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does, and again, I appreciate you educating our listeners, Lewis, because I think the amount of data that we're creating and is going out into the world continues to double, week after week, month after month, and without, I've said it often, data unevaluated data that you can't do anything with is just data, and it doesn't do anything for you. Data that you can ultimately make business decisions is really where the critical part comes in, and that's where, you guys are able to help marketers do different things with it. And so with that, I guess if our listeners, are in love with what you guys are doing and want to go figure out how to learn more, where would you send them? How do they get connected with you? How do they get connected with the team? How do they get connected and learn more about what Pairzon can do to help their business be better?
Visit us on the internet. It's Pairzon, Pairzon.com. If you're looking to talk to me about marketing, because I love talking about this stuff, it's at Lewis, LEWISNYC. And we'd be glad to talk to you and just talk you through what other customers are seeing, better understand what you're seeing in your business. And if there's a fit, great. And if there's not, that's okay too. We consider it our responsibility as a player in the ecosystem to help make things better, right? And so thinking about those 25 years I've spent in advertising, um, really taking what we built over the last 2.5 decades in digital marketing and positioning it in such a way that is better for the consumer and better for the marketer. Those are the things that really matter.
Well, and ultimately, if it's better for the consumer and better for the marketer, it's better for the brand that's paying the
That's right.
marketer to put those things in front of them, and it's growing that guest engagement, which is the guest experience is the most critical part in restaurants all day, every day. I say it all the time to our listeners. Technology for technology's sake does nothing. Marketing for marketing's sake does nothing.
That's
If it's
right.
enhancing the guest experience at the end of the day, that's what we're looking for. So, Louis, thank you for the education. Thank you for sharing kind of your guys' insights as to what you guys are doing. And quite frankly, I'd never heard even where that quote came from. So I'm gonna have to go look that up. I've spouted it off a few times in my career, but I never had any idea where it came from. So I appreciate that.
Of course, I'm glad to have added value in deciding the quote source and hopefully a couple other points as well. But it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah. And to our listeners, guys, while you guys are out checking Pairzon out, if you haven't already subscribed to the newsletter, once a month you'll get an email with all of the shows for that month. Louis, thank you so much. And to our listeners, make it a great day.